Hello, I'm Rose Diamond from Tribe in Transition, and I've been talking and thinking and writing and contemplating this whole process of psycho-spiritual transition for about 20 years now. And one of the things I'm most sure about is that those of us who are soul connected, and that doesn't have to be anything particularly deep and meaningful, but if you're here, it's quite possible that we're soul connected. In fact, everybody's soul connected in a way. But there are groups of us who are kind of moving forward together. And that doesn't mean to say necessarily that we all experience the same thing. We all have very unique life stories. But it means that there are common themes underlying our stories. And that when we start to explore what's actually going on for us in our lives now, we start to uncover these common themes. And that is part of the work of Tribe in Transition, is my way of understanding it is that consciousness precedes culture. In other words, consciousness changes first, and then we bring that out into the world and create culture. So if we want to create a new paradigm culture, it starts from here, starts from within, starts with our own consciousness, it starts in the inner world. And as our experience is happening, or certainly in my experience, when it's happening, I don't necessarily understand what's happening. I'm simply living it. I'm finding a way to negotiate, to live through it, to live with it, to co-create with my experience. And, that experience can either be joyful, blissful, exciting, inspiring. And as you know, we also get faced with challenges which are hard and which really bring us up against our limitations. That's part of the process. So the part of the process, so we experience, first of all, in our inner world, and then we find language for that experience. And as we share that together in conversation, that's when we start to actually get a much better sense of what's really going on. And that sense of what's happening, or sort of, it's really a hypothesis, and when we don't really know, we're just sort of suggesting that this was what might be going on. That gives us a more solid ground to stand on. And when we know that other people are going through similar things, that gives us an extra strength. So we all kind of start moving forward together more easily and more gracefully. And that's great, isn't it? That's what we want to do. We want to be moving forward. We want to be in the flow. So conversations which are exploratory and discovery oriented, and which start from attempting to express our authentic truth, are, in my opinion, essential. And that's part of what I offer in Tribe in Transition. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the completion as part of this process of transition. So we were in transition from, if you like, an old paradigm culture to a new paradigm culture, from an old stage of consciousness to a new stage of consciousness. We're all on different places in that spectrum, in that journey. But in order to really move, and as I've been describing in my book, Whole Mind, Whole World, we are on the verge collectively of a whole new stage of consciousness which has never been present in the world before. And this stage of consciousness holds out a great deal of hope for humanity and for our future. Because it's some would call this unity consciousness. Some would call it integral or holistic. I call it whole mind, whole world. And right in those, in that little phrase, that's everything is there. That when we are of whole mind, we inevitably start to create a whole world. And we cannot create a whole world without first having a whole mind. So part of our work, those of us who are, whether you call yourself a light worker, a change agent, whatever you call yourself someone who is actively involved in bringing positive change into the world. It starts with your consciousness. And then when you've had that experience of whole mind, of being more expanded, more whole, more present, more inspired, more open, more here, then we can choose to maintain ourselves in that place of wholeness. It's not necessarily stable. It's a choice. It's a daily choice to maintain ourselves. So going back to this, I'd like to talk a little bit about completion, because in my experience, it's not possible to fully move into the new until we have completed with the old. And this can be a long process, as you know. Part of completing with the old is a healing process. Many of us in the last years have been going through a deep healing process, which has included deep grief and loss, healing ourselves at almost like an ancestral level, not just healing our own personal stories, but healing stories from our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors, digging deep down into soul and experiencing everything, experiencing the loss and grief, experiencing, the despair, the sadness, the anger, whatever it is that's arising, and allowing that, and then integrating what's good from that into us. It's like the digestive process. We take into our bodies and we digest what is healthful, what is nourishing, and then we let go of the rest. So the process of deep healing is exactly like that. We chew it up. We chew up our experience. We look at it. We feel it. We experience it. And then we let go of what we no longer need. So many of us have been going through this process of deep healing. And it doesn't mean to say that we have to get stuck there. I think there comes a point where we are able to make a choice. Well, actually, no, I don't want to keep going back into that. I don't need to keep going back into that old story anymore. And we learn how to let the energy just move through us, whatever that energy is touching in us. So we don't have to get stuck in sadness and loss. But I do believe that it's essential at some point in our journey to go there, to really feel our grief, to really feel our loss. So completion can happen in all sorts of ways. For example, one of the things I've been doing over the last few weeks, I've just been on a trip to New Zealand where I lived for many years, and I've been clearing out a storage container. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. We human beings are so acquisitive. We gather things so quickly. We hoard things. We carry things around. And so I've been through this process of, and there was stuff in there that I've had for for all my life. Books from when I was 17 years old, books going through my whole life, books that loved ones had given me, books that had really touched me and inspired me and become part of me. And I knew that I didn't want to ship very much back to the UK. I wanted to bring a few treasured possessions, but the rest I had to let go. It was so hard. I thought I was doing pretty well with non-attachment, but actually when it came to my books, and then there were papers as well, like all my creative work for the last 20 years, it was so hard to let them go. But in the end, I just had to trust that either I would find them again. I could buy another copy of a book, or if I needed it, I could get that information. I had to trust that whatever I needed was already integrated inside of me, that I'm carrying it all inside of me, that I don't need a lot of external reference anymore. That when I want to write, it's coming, or speak as I'm speaking now, it's just coming straight from my sources of inspiration. It's coming from me. I don't need to go and look it up in a book anymore. But there was still that little part of me that was kind of clinging on to this idea that I needed something from the outside to support me. But for me, when I'm going through this process of completion and letting go, I like to know what it is I'm letting go of. I don't just sort of throw things out kind of willy-nilly, like throw boxes onto the fire without looking at them. I like to look at them first and see, oh yeah, and to feel those, get touched by those memories again, get evoked by that story, the story of who I have been, and it was especially touching to see, to really remember the place that so many inspiring people have had in my life, people that I've never met, writers. As a writer myself, it encouraged me because I thought, oh, actually, yes, books, writers do make a difference. They can change our lives. So that's just a little bit about completion. I can say a whole lot more, but I don't want to keep you too long today. So just leave you with that idea that in order to complete, we have to know what we're letting go of, and then we have to be prepared to let it go. We take with us what we really need and we let the rest go. It's all in here. Thank you.